number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Patrick Cristiano, your host, the publisher of TheaterLife.com, a website for theater buffs covering Broadway and off-Broadway theater. And I'm coming to you from the Wayne Scott LTV studio, and I have a really special guest, my friend Ruth Appelhof, consultant, author, former executive director of Guildhall for 17 years.
Right. Well, it's great being here. Thank you very much,
Thank
Patrick.
you so much for coming. It's really fun to do this.
And I'm delighted to have now a third opportunity to discuss my book on Lee Krasner. Thank you.
Ruth and I we're doing a 3-part series on a book that she wrote about Lee Krasner, Jackson Pollock's wife, which we don't want to refer to her as, but
that.
most people do, unfortunately. But we're going to change that a little bit, hopefully. Lee Krasner.
Yes.
How did it? We talk so much about this. It was a late inspiration for you, even though you wrote your thesis on her.
Right.
You never thought about writing a book about her until
I actually,
a few years ago. Is that right?
That's right. And I think the reason that I never really entertained it seriously is that I had a wonderful job at Guildhall, which took all of my time. And I loved that job. And I thought, well, nothing could be better. But then when I retired, I found this wonderful project kind of sitting in my closet. And it was all these notes and tapes and photographs of Lee Krasner. So I thought, well, okay, I've got a lot of vim and vigor and I want to do something significant. I want to leave something behind. So
a legacy besides just what you did for Guildhall, which was quite extraordinary too.
I loved doing that. That was great.
During your tenure, they tore it apart and built it up again. I mean,
it's like talk about a deconstruction. It was really, but turned out to be beautiful.
I just want to say this really quickly. I got to perform on the stage before and after, and so I really see how the sound and everything, how incredible it is as a performer to have that
really
facility.
A professional stage, and also the museum has state-of-the-art lighting and HVAC, and then we've got a new education center. Anyway. And
all the stuff that you did downstairs too. Oh my God, it was like incredible.
It was a great job.
But so the whole time you were working as the executive director, you didn't think about writing this book ever?
Oh, I kind of did. I remember once.
Tell the truth. When did you think about it the first time?
Well, I remember once going to Barbara Jo Howard, who was the head of marketing, and I said to her, there's an opportunity for me to get a grant through the museum in Washington, the Women's Museum in Washington, to write this book. And she said, Ruth, you can't do it. You don't have time. But she said, but I'll help you, later on. So actually, I didn't ask for her help, but I thought, well, now is the time. And actually, what a joy it has been to write this book, because it's not just about me and Lee in 1974 when I lived with her. The story got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I ended up interviewing about 100 people who knew her. I mean, everybody from Bonikers right up to, museum directors and gallery directors, artists. So I really, I tried to get a broad spectrum of people's comments on her.
I'm sure you did, but let's go back to the beginning, because you came out, you met her when you wrote your thesis on Lee Krasner. You were, what, 34 years old?
34, yeah.
And you already had 2 children. You'd been married before. It was, and you studied, what was your degree in?
In art history,
and you were doing a master's, was it?
Yes.
And you wrote your thesis on Lee Krasner, and you would put together, it took you a whole year to put together a bibliography on every place that she was mentioned in a magazine, a book, or anything.
That's right. It's called a bibliography. And I spent that whole year, not like today when you can go to Google and find it all in 1 minute.
I know, there's a big difference.
No, it was lines of books called the Art Index, and I looked at each one. And
you put together this bibliography, and you
Yes.
called her up. You actually called
well,
me.
she called me.
Oh, she called you.
I mailed it to
Oh,
her.
okay,
I
so
mailed
you-
it to her gallery, the Marlborough Gallery.
And it provoked a call back from her.
Yes, and she called me, and I thought, oh my God, I was stunned that she would call. And she said, well, do you ever get to New York? She was very scratchy. Do you ever get to New York? And I said, well, sure. So anyway, I went down one weekend and met with her, and she was lovely. It was just like, showed me around the apartment. She lived at 180 79th Street, which was a beautiful apartment house, I thought. Now, years later, I know it was just kind of a regular old middle-class apartment, but to me it looked glorious.
Let me interrupt you just for
Yes.
1 minute, because I want to show people the cover of the book. The book's in the galleys, but we have a picture of the cover. Can we pull it up kind of quickly? Here it is. We'll talk about this later, but
Yeah.
the photographs, you want to talk about this now or later?
Sure.
The cover photograph is
Now that
something-
we're looking at it, I'd love to talk about the photographs. The photograph was taken by Anne Schwatzky, who was a very well-known photographer out here. She's just done some amazing things. She was hired by Guildhall to take this photograph of Lee in 1982. Guildhall did a show that's still talked about called The Poets and Artists. And they selected poets, all the famous poets, Edward Albee and Philip Schultz and Grace Schulman. And then they selected artists to go with the poet. So in Lee Krasner's case, they asked Howard Moss to write a poem. He did. He and Lee Krasner got together. The poem is called Morning Glory, and it's a beautiful poem about
And that's in the
this-
book too, right?
Yes. So it's a beautiful poem about this morning glory, and it seemed to be the perfect poem for her. 1982 was 2 years before she passed away, so she wasn't well, but still she painted this great painting, and it's on the cover.
So you come to visit her now.
Yes.
So I wanted people to see what your book looks like, is what.
Thank you.
So you come to see her, and this translates into what happens now.
Well, so we met a couple of times. We get along. It's been great. In fact, she even asked me to stay over, so I got to stay in the maid's room, which I thought was so great. And then she said, well, what would you be doing this summer? Would you like to come out this summer and stay with me, and you can write your master's thesis on me? Well, I could have fainted. I'm a part-time graduate student in Syracuse with not a lot of options. And so anyway,
Now you're going to the
said, of
Hamptons with
course.
Lee Krasner. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, my two children, by the way, were 8 and 10, and they usually went to visit their father in the summer. So I had a chance to kind of explore on my own, and so this was a wonderful opportunity. And I drove down from Syracuse in an orange Pinto, which was very déclassé, and out came the bellman with all her bags, which somehow they stuffed in this tiny little car. And Lee and I then drove out to East Hampton, but neither one of us knew where East Hampton was.
No, she
I had
didn't know
no
how to get
idea,
here.
and she didn't know how to get here. So it took a little while longer than one would expect, but we managed to get here.
But you got here, and you did interviews with her in the morning on a
Yes.
reel-to-reel tape.
Yes.
When did you transcribe those tapes?
Well, I didn't transcribe them until years later. I kept them in a box, as one will, with a lot of notes and photographs of her.
Because this is a coup how this happened.
Well, it was a coup, so I knew to take care of them. But in the meantime, I've got 3 or 4 other museum directorships and other jobs.
And the
that's going
technology
on.
changed so much that
Yes.
to transcribe
So I'm carrying them from place to place. And finally, this very sweet guy from Syracuse University came out to visit me here. I think to ask for money, but that didn't work out for him. But he said, what can I do for you? And I said, well, actually, I've got these tapes, and there's this very famous Belfer Sound Lab at Syracuse University. They might take the tapes and digitize them. So he arranged that for me, which was such a blessing.
That was, because they wouldn't have been useless to you otherwise.
Yeah. Well, they actually just disintegrate.
Yeah.
So we got the tapes. We had had them transcribed, and that's then what I used.
Thank you, Syracuse. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's so much to talk about here, but let's look at some of the pictures you brought, because they kind of
Sure.
give you a little bit of a history of you and Lee and the evolution of the book and some of
Right.
it. Because what I thought it was really cool, they had her painting as on the poster of the film festival this
Yes,
year.
wasn't that wonderful?
Yeah, and it was a really, I wish we had it to show them, because
Yes,
you told me that that's a really important piece, because
it's a wonderful piece. It's called Vernal Yellow, and it's a piece that Lee created using all of her different approaches to media. She loved collage and painting and printmaking, and so they're all in this one piece. It's just a gorgeous piece. And you can now buy the posters. So
yeah,
it's,
you guys will have to Google the film festival
yeah.
from 2019, and you can check out this poster, and you could get a copy of it if you
Sure,
wanted to.
yeah. I mean, it's frameable. It's very, very nice.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's go right to the photos that you brought. Here's a picture of you and Lee.
Right.
When you were first meeting her.
Well, after I met her, actually, this photograph was a rare opportunity for me, because when I first met her in '74, she would not allow me to take her picture.
Oh.
Oh no, that
She
was
didn't she didn't pose with other people either? She didn't have her picture
She
taken?
did pose with other people, famous photographers, but not with me. So anyway.
So you worked your way up.
Worked my way up. So by 1975, I think this was 75, the year after I lived with her, she invited me to her show at Pace Gallery. And while we were there, she agreed to be photographed with me.
So that's where this was,
yes,
at the Pace Gallery.
yeah.
So let's move on with the pictures, because I'm watching the time, and
Okay.
I believe that goes fast.
I know.
So what's this one here?
Well, this is a find that I made in doing the research on the book. This is at Louse Point, which, as you know, is out here. It's a charming little area of the Gardiner's Bay. She and Jackson actually lived here first before they moved into the Springs fireplace.
So this was their
house.
first house?
This was their first house. They actually rented it from an artist whose name was Reuben Kadish.
So this was the house they rented on Louse Point?
Yes.
Right on the water?
Yes.
A little
Isn't that
bungalow
funny?
on the water?
Yeah.
Well, what's next?
And then this
is
is
the-
actually the Polly Krasner house.
Right.
Which is where I did my research over the last couple of years.
Oh, I
Because
forgot to
it's-
mention you're a fellow at the Pollock Krasner. What's the full name of it?
The Pollock Krasner House and Study Center. And I'm working with Helen Harrison.
Take down
who's
the picture while we
director.
talk.
Helen Harrison, who's the director of the Pollock Krasner House. She's an amazing
So this
woman.
opened up a flood of information to you.
Yes, a lot of it at the house. So, that was very, very
So
fortunate.
did you
for me.
go every day almost?
Yes, and it's only a mile away from my house.
Aren't you
In fact,
lucky?
it's walkable, but I always drove. But so I was lucky, and she's been a mentor to me. She's been great. So the house now is open to the public.
And you've done talks there too about Lee as
Yes.
well, haven't you?
Well, I just did this one for the Hamptons Film Festival, and I did another talk earlier this spring for the Polly Krasner House, but at the library at Southampton College. So, and it was wonderful. I had standing room only, and most of the
No,
people.
she's a big draw. Are you the big draw? Who is it?
I
The
don't
big-
know, but most of the people there knew about Krasner, so it
And I bet
turned
they
out
knew
to be.
about you a little bit too.
I
But let's go.
don't know.
Time is going so fast. I know.
Yeah.
Now, what's this? What's this here?
Well, I thought it was important to point out that Lee Krasner was an equal with her male counterparts out here in East Hampton. And so this is at Guildhall. And this was one of the invitational shows that they had at Guildhall. Krasner, of course, on your left, Robert Motherwell in the center, and Willem de Kooning on the right. So she really enjoyed being one of the.
And she looks like she belongs there, even in the photo,
yes.
doesn't she?
Well,
yeah.
They're all like hanging
next?
on every word she's saying, right?
What's next?
So I thought I would include a photograph. The photograph we just saw was during the time that Jackson was alive. And here's another photograph of Lee and Jackson in his studio. He had the big barn.
Mm-hmm.
So she had a very small room, a bedroom upstairs in the house, the room that I lived in. So her paintings were much smaller than his.
Because she didn't have as much space to paint.
And I think the picture is important to make the point that there would have been no Jackson Pollock without Lee Krasner. That she really was helping steer his ship from
She
beginning
also
to
kept him
end.
alive, probably, too.
Absolutely, yeah. But she introduced him to everyone in New York. He knew no one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she really opened all doors for him.
Do we have more photos? Oh, this is what
Now, this is a really important painting. This is a painting she did the summer that she and Jackson kind of broke up. It's called Prophecy. She named it after he died, but it was a painting that she did just before she left for Europe and just before Jackson moved Ruth Kligman into the house. So it was kind of a traumatic moment for
Was that
him.
the end of the relationship, or did they get back together again?
Well, he died. He killed himself in a car accident.
So once, because I don't know the whole history.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
once
So
they broke up, he moved Ruth into the house. That's when he died.
Yes.
So she did keep him alive.
Yes, in fact, very good point, because I think that was one of the things that drove her in her paintings was this kind of obsession and guilt that she had
Left him,
about leaving him.
abandoning him.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So
Yeah.
what else do we have here? This is Lee.
This is Lee. No, so finally she lets me take her picture. This is
This
74.
you took this one?
Yeah, I took this picture. She let me come to the studio, the barn that used to be Jackson's.
So she moved into the barn too.
Oh yeah, right away. And the photograph is of her sitting in front of several of her major paintings that she was working on that summer. It's interesting that she really took pride in the fact that it was a private domain for her. And in fact, even when Jackson was alive, he would have to ask permission to go to her studio, and she would ask permission to go to his. But you could see that it was a hallowed ground, and I was very fortunate to have her allow me to photograph her in that setting. It was wonderful.
Are there more pictures?
This is a painting of a work that she did. The last major series of work that she did, she showed at the Pace Gallery in New York. And it was called 11 Ways to See. And it's a series of actually not 11 but 12 paintings. This one called Imperative.
So this painting is one of a series of 12?
Yes. And what I loved about it is that it took these beautiful drawings that she did in the Hans Hofmann School in between 38 and 40. She cut them up herself. She loved doing this, and kind of organized them differently in kind of a cubist organization that turned out to be her last major series. And I think what this says is that she always took these kind of risky chances, and in this case, to cut up her beautiful drawings from years ago and recreate art for that particular moment. The show was a huge success, sold out, and even today it's thought of, this series, as one of her great series.
And this was the Pace, is where you said it was?
Yes, yeah.
Are there more pictures? What is this, Pace?
Well, this is Bilbao.
Oh.
And I did want to make the point that there's a very important show of Lee Krasner's work traveling through Europe right now. And while she's very well known in the States, in fact, she just sold a painting at Sotheby's for $11 million, she's not so well known in Europe. So there's a show that just opened, well, this past summer in London at the Barbican Gallery.
Is it still open or is it closed?
Well, it's traveling.
Oh, that's what's
So
traveling.
it now is in Frankfurt, then it will go to Bern, and finally the last spot will be the Guggenheim Museum, this museum, in Bilbao.
Now, did you go see were you at the opening of the show?
Not only came to the opening, I was invited to the opening, but I gave a lecture there.
Oh, how cool.
Yes, so they invited me back to lecture about Lee Krasner.
Very cool.
Oh, it was so much fun, yes, it was wonderful.
I love it.
People love the stories. She was a total character.
Let's go. Are there more pictures? Or do we see them all?
That might
That's the
be
last.
it.
Because we're almost at the end of time. Well, tell me, now you did all this research. What was the most surprising thing you learned that you didn't know about her?
Well, I think that she was so afraid. She was very, very afraid. And it started with a story that she told me about a monster when she was a child. And the monster came up from the cellar and crawled over the banister and, was going to attack her. It's a story that she told many different people, including Clement Greenberg. So it really hung with her all the years of her life, this fear and this monster. And what I discovered, I think, in looking at the paintings, was that actually the monster was herself, and that she needed to make art in order to transform the monster into something that she could manage. And then finally, the work really turned out that she becomes the magician, and it kind of transforms from the monster to the magician. So it at the end, you saw this painting imperative, and you can see that there was that transformation.
So just despite all her fears, she managed to work anyway
Yes.
and overcome her fears to be in the moment.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and create something
Yeah.
from the fear.
Right, exactly.
It was informative. It actually informed her work in a way then too.
It saved her life,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yeah.
So, in what ways would you say the book you wrote is different than what you started out to do?
Well, certainly, I started out to just transcribe my own tapes and put a little story together. But the more I looked at that, the more I thought, well, wait a minute. What if somebody else has a different point of view? And then actually, I have to tell you, my point of view was I wasn't particularly happy living with her. She was very tough on me. So, but okay, I asked for it. People told me don't go because she's going to beat you up. But anyway, so it turned out that she did beat me up, and I just left it behind, went on with my life, came back to it now 3 years later, and discovered that in my interviews that almost everyone that I talked to had the same experience, that they were thrilled to be with her, they admired her, they knew she was a wonderful artist, but she was very tough on people. So
Yeah, I was going to say that most people, it's nothing personal. It's mostly just who they are.
Right,
And
right.
And when you seeing the interviews, doing
Yeah.
all those interviews, you get to actually discover
I learned
it.
that, yes, yeah.
So why do you think people should read this book about Lee?
Well, for one thing, it's a little risque. It really does tap into her psychological persona and hooks that up with her paintings in a way that I don't think other people have done. And there's a lot of
So this has more
fascinating-
intimate details.
Yes,
And you talked about one time when we were discussing this about how she used to walk around naked in the house in front of you, and the bathroom was like down the hall,
Yeah.
and she had to walk down the hall naked.
it was scary. But
That was scary?
Well, it was for me.
At that age.
But I do think that it also showed that she was very comfortable with herself, that she was free to be this person that was part of nature. And so as she saw herself in her paintings, she saw her nakedness as part of the wonderful expression of herself as a great artist. So you kind of take that as a clue to where she really wanted to go with it.
Mm-hmm. So we have less than 2 minutes. What else do you think is pertinent that we'd want to leave the viewers with about Lee Krasner?
Well,
or to entice them to
right. Well, I think the book takes what other art historians, Ellen Landau and Gail Levin primarily, have done writing about Lee and covering every detail, and it kind of gives you a more personal look at a woman that is very difficult, very creative, a huge personality, and one that has made a huge difference in art as we see it today. So it's just a more in-depth look at someone that I think is very inspiring, not only for the general public, but I think particularly for women artists. I really think that she speaks to us in a very personal way.
Now your book is at the publishers.
Yes.
And the gal, when will it come out? Do you have any idea?
Well, the publisher is telling me to say the spring of 2020.
So I just want to. So if they want to find out about it in the spring, you have a website?
I do, and you can also.
So tell the camera right there.
You can also first go on Amazon and buy the painting or the book right now.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
But also it'll be your website.
My website is ruthappelhof.com, so you can go to the website and it will take you to the Amazon site. But it's they make it very easy.
You can go to her website. There's show the book one more time. Yeah, there's the book. I love the cover. Lee and Me.
Isn't it great?
By Ruth Appelhof.
Ann Chotsky did all of this.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
We're
Thank
out
you.
of time.